Shalom, Yuval Brodetsky is here with my new shelter-in-place beard. So last week I did a video about prophecies in the Bible and I got a lot of requests to do it in English. So let's give it a go. So the first thing I should mention is that I'm not a very practicing Jew, but growing up in Israel I did get acquainted with the Old Testament and I noticed that things from history shows up in the text. And I'm not talking about minuscule things or coincidental similarities. I'm talking about major unique events that play out in history exactly as written in the Bible. And I thought, that's very interesting. Now there are a lot of Bible prophecies that have come true, but I'll talk just of a few examples. So the Jewish people is to be exiled from the land of Israel, but not just to a neighboring country, but rather to be scattered all over the world. And they're not to be assimilated to their new communities, but rather to suffer endless persecutions. And they're not to disappear due to being persecuted and scattered, but rather to keep their identity. And even though they're keeping their identity and remain eternal, they are not to grow in huge numbers, but rather to stay a small minority amongst the nations. And even though they're a small minority amongst the nations, by the way, just under 15 million Jews in the whole world, but they're still to be remain very famous, and they are eventually to gather from all over the world and to return to their historical homeland. Now, every one of those things I just mentioned is unique. It's unprecedented in world history. And yet, all of those things happened, and they were already written in the Bible as a prophecy. So it is as if the reality is a movie, and the Bible is the script. The Bible, of course, is the first to introduce monotheism to the world. And the story of creation in the Bible starts with God creating everything, which means He's outside of nature and above it, and that's different from all the gods that came before Him. No doubt the Bible is an amazing book. A lot of our modern life is based on what the Bible gave us. I mean, even our laws, the concept of man created in His image is what allowing us to even understand personal rights. And remember, the creation story started with Adam and Eve, so men all over are created in God's image. They are equal, and the Bible gives rights to the orphan and to the widow. And we're talking about a book from thousands of years ago where most societies didn't care much about human life. And the Bible even talk about rights of animals. There are over 600 commandments in the Bible, and a lot of them have to do with the rights of animals. Amazing. The story is also special in how the Jews appear so realistically in it. I mean, realistically in a human sense, with all the human flaws. And that goes also for all their leaders. And I don't know of another example of a people writing a book for themselves where they describe themselves in such a manner. So here are 6 examples of Bible prophecies that came true. Small nation. Many times in the Bible it is promised that the Jewish nation will be eternal, and yet it is prophesied that will be a small minority amongst the nation. That doesn't seem to make too much sense. Chinese nation is also very ancient, and that is exactly why the number more than 1 billion people, even with birth restrictions over there. The Jewish nation is also ancient, and yet just like the Bible prophesies, we are a small minority amongst the nations. Scattered all over the world. The Bible prophesies that the Jews will be exiled from the land of Israel. That's not very impressive because that was a very common practice back in those days. However, it is clearly mentioning that we'll be scattered all over the world, and that is very unique. Now look, on the one hand, it says that we'll be an eternal people. On the other hand, it says we're going to be scattered all over the world. Again, that's another thing that seems to defy logic, and yet that's what happened. This sentence prophesies that the nations will always speak of us, and it means in more negative way. The Hebrew translation, it really make it sound like we will always be famous. And it's enough to just look at UN resolutions and what a percentage of them is directed towards the one country of Israel to see a pretty straightforward fulfillment of this sentence. Anti-Semitism. There was no reason to assume that Jews won't find peace in the new countries they were exiled to. Immigrants from all over the world eventually assimilate into their new communities. Jews are the exceptions, and they always eventually suffered sometimes of pogroms, persecutions, expelments, or Holocaust. Keeping the identity. Many times in the Bible it is promised for the Jewish nation to remain eternal. These sentences are just a few examples of that. Now usually nations come and nations go. The Jewish nation is an exception, even though all the odds were actually stacked against them. Here is what one of the world's most famous historians thought about that. Desolations for thousands of years. It is prophesied that the land of Israel would be desolate while the Jews are in exile, and that it will return to be very prosperous only when the Jews will return. Indeed, the land was desolate, and it made some researchers theorize that it might have to do with the Romans' active attempt to hurt the earth by sowing it with huge quantities of salt as a punishment after the Great Jewish Revolt. Nowadays, the land, of course, is a land of blessings. Not only that it produces great yield, but it even exports agricultural knowledge to huge countries such as China and India. The last miracle I want to talk about is the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. And the miracle here is twofold, both on the part of the people that managed to gather from all over the world and reestablish their state against all odds and despite their poor condition back then, and on the part of the land that was given to them by the UN and was available for them after all those thousands of years. Remember, in all of recorded history, there were only 3 independent countries on that land. The first Jewish kingdom, the second Jewish kingdom, and the third modern state of Israel. That's pretty amazing. That is it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to leave comments. If you made it all the way to here, then you're amazing. Please like, please share. This is very important for me. It's the first time I'm doing something like this, and that will be my indication if it was worth a while. So again, thank you very much.